After the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France, the Vuelta a España is the final Grand Tour of the season. It's the youngest of the three Grand Tours and arguably the toughest due to its positioning in the calendar and its penchant for rooting out the steepest climbs it can find. Amidst the mountains, there are opportunities for the fast men, and there will be some top-notch sprinters alongside the GC contenders. Defending champion Kruijff isn't riding, but it's still a strong field. Here are Cyclingnews' riders to watch for the Vuelta a España. Still just 24, Miguel Ángel López has made a name for himself as a Grand Tour contender, enjoying a breakthrough third place at the Giro d'Italia earlier this year. López's introduction to the Vuelta in 2016 was not so successful, after he departed early following two heavy crashes in the opening week. Last season, he took 8th overall and won 2 stages along the way. López took a long break after the Giro, returning to racing at the start of August and recently finished second at the Vuelta a Burgos. Vincenzo Nibali is set to ride the Vuelta after crashing and breaking a vertebra during the second week of the Tour de France. Nibali hasn't ridden since, but remains determined to make the start line in Malaga on August 25th. Nibali finished second overall at last year's Vuelta, despite crashing and breaking a rib on the final mountain stage. Given the lack of proper preparation and the injury he sustained, Nibali maintains that he's not focused on the overall title this year. Nevertheless, we can expect some fireworks from the Italian, though they may come in the final week. Peter Sagan announced his participation in the Vuelta a España with a not-so-cryptic message on Twitter. His appearance will be the first since he rode the 2015 event. Sagan's first Grand Tour success came at the Spanish race, when he won 3 stages on his debut in 2011. Sagan will be using the Vuelta as preparation for the World Championships, where he's aiming for a record-breaking 4th title. But how he does will depend on how he recovered from a high-speed crash at the Tour de France. Richie Porte is another rider coming into the Vuelta a España looking to get things back on track after an abrupt conclusion to his Tour de France. Porte crashed out on the Tour's cobble stage before the race hit the pave and broke his collarbone. It was the second consecutive year that the Australian had left the race on stage 9. Porte's not ridden the Vuelta a España since his debut in 2012 and, like many, he'll be using the race as preparation for the Worlds in Innsbruck. Both Simon and Adam Yates are set to ride the Vuelta, but it's Simon that has had his eyes on this race from the start. Simon rode the Giro d'Italia in May, winning 3 stages and wearing the pink jersey. He looked like he might win the overall title until he ran out of steam on the Colle della Finestra. Yates had 2 months away from racing following the Giro, before making his comeback last month. His final pre-Vuelta race was the Tour de Polonia, where he won a stage and finished second overall. Elia Viviani has won more than any other rider this season, and the Italian will be hoping to increase his gap over the rest of the pack at the Vuelta. Viviani moved to Quick-Step Floors for the 2018 season and immediately racked up wins at the Tour Down Under, Dubai Tour and Abu Dhabi Tour. He had big boots to fill at the Giro after Fernando Gaviria's 2017 success and delivered with 4 victories and the points jersey. In June, he claimed the Italian national title and a string of wins at the Adriatica-Ionica race. Denis Saccharin will lead the line for Katusha Alpecin at the Vuelta a España this month. The Russian rider took 3rd at last year's race, moving on to the podium on the final mountain stage. This season the focus for Saccharin was the Tour de France. It started poorly, but he clawed his way back into the top 10 in the final week. Saccharin will have one eye on the World Championships, but he stands a real chance of making the podium once again if he can improve on his Tour de France form. After a troubled season, the Vuelta will be an important race for Fabio Aru. His primary focus of the Giro d'Italia was already going off the rails when he eventually abandoned in the 3rd week due to illness. It would be 2 months before he turned a pedal again in Anchor, making his comeback at the Tour de Wallonie. He rode a quiet but consistent race to finish 10th overall and did the same at the subsequent Tour de Polonia. Aru needs a good result here to save his season. After such a strong summer for the Lotto NL Jumbo squad, George Bennett will hope to keep it going at the Vuelta a España. Bennett's Grand Tour breakthrough came when he took a top 10 at the 2016 event. Last year's race ended early due to illness, but he's back for the 5th straight season, this time off the back of a strong Giro d'Italia. Bennett took 8th overall at the Italian race, though it might have been higher but for some mechanical issues. Lotto NL Jumbo also has Steven Kruijff, who finished 5th at the Tour de France. Last year's Vuelta a España ended in heartbreak for Wilco Kelderman after he slipped off the podium on the final climb of the Angliru. he would still hold on for 4th, a career best for the Dutchman. With Tom Dumoulin resting after his Giro Tour double, Kelderman is the leader for Team Sunweb. He had been penned for the Tour too, but injured his shoulder in a crash at the Dutch Nationals. He should be fresh for the Vuelta, and time will tell if he can repeat his 2017 run. Alongside Aru, Dan Martin gives UAE Team Emirates more options at the Vuelta. Whereas Aru is aiming for the general classification, Martin is targeting stage victories. Martin finished 8th overall at the Tour de France last month and won a stage along the way, the 2nd of his career. A massive crash in the opening week hindered his progress, but his aggressive style of racing saw him take the overall combativity award. Whether or not he's targeting the overall, we can expect Martin to light up the Vuelta's mountain stages. The Vuelta a España was not originally in the plan for Thibaut Pinot, but after a bout of illness he has his sights set on Spain. Pinot's season started well with victory at the Tour of the Alps in April. He was going strong at the Giro until he almost ground to a halt on the final mountain stage. He would finish the stage, but he never made it to Rome, eventually being diagnosed with pneumonia. His recovery was hampered by Lyme's disease, but his return to racing went well with 3rd at the Tour de Polonia.